Hello, welcome to my channel. In the recent episode, How Cold is Too Cold for African Violets, I showed this plant with signs of powdery mildew on the leaves. This white grayish powder that shows on the leaves when it gets too cold and too humid around them, and also it can be seen on blooms as well. Here is an example of powdery mildew, and it was caused by the drop in the temperatures and the night temperatures being much colder than the daytime. So this white powdery stuff on the leaves is called powdery mildew. This variety is called N. tumbalina in English, and in the native language it's called N. dyumovachka. It's a Russian hybrid by Nadezhda Berdnikova. So on the left here you see the plant affected with powdery mildew, and you can see the grayish and whitish powder on the leaves. And on the right you can see what the healthy leaves look like on this plant. This plant likes to produce suckers, so even though it's healthy, it still needs some cleanup. And because I'm showing them in close proximity, I will be treating both of these plants later with fungicide. But first, let's talk some more about powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is a fungal disease caused by a fungus which grows on the surface of the leaves and flowers of plants. There are many kinds of powdery mildew fungi that can attack plants, and most are highly specialized. For example, the powdery mildew fungus that affects African violets may not infect other plants, and vice versa. There are some great online resources about powdery mildew, and I will include a few links in the description box under this video. The powdery mildew fungus is a multi-cell organism that grows on the surface of the living plant tissue, and it produces masses of spores which become airborne and spread to other plants. And that's how it grows and affects not only one plant, but also the neighboring plants, if not noticed and treated timely. The risk of powdery mildew increases with extreme fluctuations between day and nighttime temperatures, especially in the growing areas with poor air circulation, which happens mostly during the winter growing season. If left untreated, the plant affected by powdery mildew can start losing leaves. Like here, for example, you can see this particular leaf has already dried out. And the plant can wither and even die. Here's another leaf. Catching it early increases our chances of successful treatment. First, I isolate the affected plant to prevent the spreading of the fungus onto the neighboring plants. Next, before treatment, I remove all dead or dying leaves and all blooms if there are any blooms on the plant. I try not to touch the leaves, so I use tweezers, for example, to remove the old and the dead leaves, or the leaves that are dying. This particular plant will need some major desuckering surgery, and I do have a video where I show how to remove suckers. Sometimes it's hard to see the powdery mildew and the leaf can look seemingly healthy, but then if you look at the surface of this leaf, up close, you will see this white grayish powdery stuff on it. And normally the leaves like that, they also look dull or duller in comparison to a healthy plant. Here as well, there is another one. So make sure to remove all of the leaves, and once all the gray and dead leaves have been removed, then I will wash it with the tepid water with some dish soap added to it. Dish soap can be any soap, and I happen to have this one, dishwashing liquid. So I just put a few drops here and then fill the rest with warm or tepid warm water. Usually I do it in my kitchen sink, but for the purpose of this video, I will show you here on the shelf. So basically just thoroughly wash off the powdery mildew with soapy water, and we will be repotting the plant later on, so don't be afraid that the water will get into the potting mix as well. So now we're gonna pat it dry with paper towel. Discard of the water, make sure it doesn't get onto any other plants because it has the spores of the powdery mildew fungus in it. So we need to be very careful about keeping all the surfaces clean and discarding our paper towels, and everything that touched this plant needs to be thoroughly cleaned. After the soap wash, when the moisture evaporates and the surface of the leaves appears dry, I use a fungicide spray. There are several sprays for powdery mildew that African violet growers use. Let's start with Lysol. Lysol is a daily cleanser with hydrochlorous acid as an active ingredient, listed here on the bottom left of the label. I tried using Lysol on the plants that displayed symptoms of powdery mildew, and it left a little burn mark on the leaves. And maybe I didn't spray it from the far enough distance. I'm not sure, but I do not prefer using Lysol on the plants. Then there are also different types of fungicide available to treat powdery mildew. I have a couple of sprays that are ready to use sprays, and there is also a spray that is concentrate liquid that needs to be mixed with water and then sprayed on the plants. The Garden Safe Fungicide 3 spray has worked for me rather well. It acts as fungicide, insecticide, and miticide, and when the powdery mildew symptoms break out in the cold season, this particular fungicide is known to control powdery mildew as well as other fungal diseases such as black spot and rust. This particular fungicide is nice because it's organic. It says here for organic gardening, and it's based on neem oil. Also, there is another fungicide that I found, and I purchased it, but I haven't used it yet. It's by Bonide, and it's called copper fungicide with active ingredient called copper soap, copper octanoate. Copper fungicide helps control several fungal diseases such as powdery mildew, downy mildew, early blight, and black spot. I've heard other African violet growers using it successfully. I just haven't tried using it myself yet, but I keep it just in case. And finally, the concentrated type of fungicide called Immunox multi-purpose fungicide by Spectracide has been known to be very successful in treating powdery mildew on African violets. This particular fungicide has an active ingredient called myclobutanil. It comes in a concentrate form and needs to be dissolved before applying. The concentration is specified here in the directions for use that comes with the bottle. So we just open this particular booklet here and can read about the directions of use and other important information. And normally it's 1 fluid ounce per gallon of water. And African violet growers recommend mixing about the same ratio in a smaller amount, 1.5 teaspoons per quart of water. The concentrate can be mixed with water directly in the spray bottle from which you will be spraying the plants. It's recommended to spray the plants before dark so the plants can dry out overnight. In my case, I will first start with the organic spray, the neem oil based spray called Garden Safe Fungicide 3, because I used it in the past and it used to work. All around and also on the potting mix inside under the leaves, because the spores of powdery mildew can be hiding on the surface of the potting mix. So everything needs to be sprayed quite evenly. And I'm doing it under the lights, but I do not recommend spraying the fungicide under the lights. So I will remove this plant into the dark room and let it dry there overnight. Usually 1 treatment is enough and the powdery mildew symptoms disappear after the first application. And if not, I reapply it within 10 days intervals until the symptoms are fully gone. For prevention of powdery mildew, maintain a warm, constant temperature that varies no more than 10 degrees, day and night. Keep violets as close to 70 degrees Fahrenheit as possible in the growing area. Growing between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit is fine, and some varieties and species like growing in cooler growing temperatures as long as it's not under 60 degrees Fahrenheit. In addition to temperature, also watch the humidity levels in the growing area. They should be no more than 60%. And here we can see I have 50% humidity now, or just jumped to 51, and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And we can see here that the lowest in the growing area within the last 24 hours was 68. Space plants and maintain good air circulation in the growing area, and if needed, use fans to circulate the air. Keep the growing area, pots and tools clean and disinfect with 10% bleach solution as needed. Because powdery mildew can spread by spores to other plants, it's important to observe the plants to spot the powdery mildew symptoms as early as possible and isolate the infected plants. Like other fungi, the powdery mildew fungus can develop resistance to different kinds of fungicides over time. So it's recommended to rotate different fungicides to help slow down the development of fungal strains that are resistant to the particular fungicide.